most people can't even think that the possibility of being a millionaire wearing flip-flops can even exist. It seems like this, thing that gets taunted about on the internet. But is this real? Is this a gimmick? What's the deal?
No, it's very much real, and I think all of us go about it in a little different way, and that was certainly my journey as well. I like to say I did not get here in the normal path. So
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we hear these stories about, making a ton of money, living by the beach, you would actually assume that it's somebody that's, worked really, really hard for all of their life, and it's only what you get to achieve once you've attained retirement. But the path that you followed was very different, and you've been able to achieve that in quite a record time. So what happened there?
So, it really came down to identifying really early on what I wanted out of life. And, you talked about time freedom in the opener, and that was it for me. It was never necessarily about the money. It was about being able to go out and experience the world. And, I always said if I died tomorrow, and I've said this for 20 years, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but if I died tomorrow, I had a really good run. I've done the things I wanted to do. I didn't wait until I was 70 to buy back health or buy back time or buy back the loved ones that I wanted to experience those things with. And it's just something we're not necessarily taught, how to think about life that way.
It's true that the majority will probably not think of how you can approach this situation differently, but you were kind of given a chance, or you've been able to stumble upon this, or was it something that you've always had a curiosity for? So I'm just curious, like, what made it so that you looked at the current system, that, path to 70, trying to buy back your time, buy back your health, and you said, like, no, I think there's a better way. Like, what were the fundamentals that needed to be in place for you to even challenge that, yet alone actually achieve it?
Yeah. I mean, what a deep question, right? That would fill a couple-hour podcast. I'll give you a little background, if that's okay. So I was that kid who, a lifelong entrepreneur, figured out at a really young age I didn't want to work for anybody else. I was 8, 9, 10 years old, selling candy at school and selling golf balls down at the end of the street, and, whatever I could do to get the things that I wanted, which at that time were Game Boys and Converse All-Stars and a bike and those kind of things. So, fast forward 20 years later, and I'm going through college. I already have multiple businesses running, both product and service based, and I'm only 19 years old. I graduate college. I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and I took a job. That's an evil word in my world. And I was with a Fortune 100 home builder, and I was selling new homes. I've always crushed it in sales. This was no different. And I'm 24, 25, making more in a month than my parents ever made in a year. We didn't grow up with anything. I grew up in a little 1-bath house on a super busy road in Michigan. And I could buy anything I wanted, do anything I wanted, go anywhere I wanted. I'm living an unbelievable life, and I'm absolutely miserable. And I wake up every day with that sinking, is this all there is feeling? And I was facing anxiety and depression and worse, and found myself on an operating table, and I was about to get the discs in my back fused. And without going into all the medical side of that, sometimes your body will produce pain as a psychological response because you have such extreme mental stress that it's trying to preserve your brain, basically, is a really, really simplistic way of putting it. And you can go into all the research, but I stopped that surgery. A friend had given me a book by John Sarno called Healing Back Pain, which basically says your pain is in your brain. And here I am 20 years later. I never got the surgery. And what changed? I'd always been a student of life. By the time I was 24, 25, I'd probably read 200 nonfiction books. It's just, I was that kid who was 13 listening to Tony Robbins on my rollerblades with my Discman. It's just everyone else figuring out what movie to go to, right? I was different. And I dove into those books, and I said, this isn't me. This isn't my life. I've got to change something here. I left corporate America. I left that job. I left the 401k. I left the company stock match. I left all of those things. And at that time, I started a construction company. And the point here is that I went back into entrepreneurship because at my core, my values will tell you I'm an entrepreneur. And if you look at my top 3 values, and that's what we do in the Waves method, and we'll talk more about that, but my top 3 values are freedom, autonomy, and community. Now, take those 3 and imagine I'm sitting in a model home. I spend most days by myself, and I'm stuck there for 40 hours a week babysitting a garage. Why on God's green earth would I think that would last, right? So at a very young age, I figured out that money is not necessarily where it's at. You personally, you can earn and earn and earn, but it doesn't fill that inexhaustible hole inside unless you're filling your cup in some other way. And so I went through every book I'd ever read, and all the call them the greats, but Rumi and Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins and Barbara DeAngelis and just all of those people who were personal development kind of self-help psychology authors to learn from. And I developed this system, and it was just for me. I never told anybody about it, but it was ultimately a filter. And what the Weaves method is, it's your why, authenticity, values, exploration, and your statement of purpose. And I took years to develop those things and do those deep dives into the challenges, the failures, all the things that had kind of built me to where I was at that point. And every future decision I made from that point forward went through that filter. And if it didn't fit, I didn't do it. And I'm not talking just business decisions, relationship decisions, who I'm friends with, the activities I'm going to engage in, all of those things go through that filter. So fast forward 20 years and multiple businesses later, and I know we've got some real estate background to talk about. And, it's at 42, I sold my last business and retired. So I tell people I don't necessarily have to be doing anything. And I could just go, I'd build classic cars in my spare time. I could just do that all day, every day if I wanted to. But here I am on a show with you, and I'm working 16, 18 hours a day because there's a much bigger purpose that I'm a part of.
I find that fascinating because, a lot of people have this idea that, oh my God, if I could just strike the lottery, if I work hard and sell my business, get a big payout, then I'll find myself not needing to do anything and I won't do anything. But I don't think I've met someone that's had that and actually stopped doing anything, because there's a fulfillment that comes from the actual work and the value that's being created. Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.